Fleo is a loser dimwit who was summoned as a hero to fight against the Demon Lord, but when everyone notices he's a weakling, he's tossed away like trash. However, after killing monsters and leveling up, he unlocks several S-rank skills and becomes the strongest. Now, he will form a party of busty warriors to defeat the Demon King and get freaky whatever he wants. It all began on a certain day when Fleo vanished from his depressing world and appeared in a strange room. There, an old man explained that he was summoned to another world as a potential hero who would aid them in fighting the Dark Army. The old man said it was time to assess his abilities, and he was instructed by a demi-human girl to place his hands on a magic crystal. He placed his hand on the crystal, causing it to glow, and the old fart explained that Isekai heroes were given extraordinary stats when summoned as level 1s. However, when his status screen popped up, the demi-human girl freaked out over the fact that all his stats were normal. Almost trash. The mages feared that they had failed until they saw that a blonde gigachad with overpowered abilities had been summoned as well. Everyone immediately started glazing the blondie as a hero due to his godly stats, while Fleo was tossed aside like an old hooker for being a weakling. A while later, he was informed by the King's Guard that he couldn't return home because the gate that brought him there was permanently closed. However, he was granted permission to live in the Delaveza forest under the condition that he didn't speak about his Isekai situation. 20 days later, the carriage driver dropped him off and handed him a bag of items which the king had left him, before warning him that the Dark Army lurked around those parts. After the carriage left, Fleo pulled out a sword from the bag as he was being attacked by some slimes. He managed to defeat the slimes, but he saw that his sword had broken, that he had reached level 2, and all his stats show the infinite sign. When he activated an Isekai version of Siri on his status screen, she informed him that he has unlocked several S-rank skills, and he realizes that all his stats are now maxed out. She also informs Fleo that a tracking skill was used on his item bag, causing him to realize that the king wanted him dead. The system deactivated the spells on the bag and informed him that the forest was filled with demons who emitted a deadly poison. He gave her permission to purify the forest using his magic, and as soon as she pulled it off, he got spammed with status screens, which informed him that his level had increased. Meanwhile, the princess called her dad a cruel scumbag for sending Fleo to the Dark Forest, but he said he couldn't care less about the failed hero. Just then, a mage informed the king that the highest level of magic was used in purifying the forest. The king thought it was Blondie who pulled it off, but the mage said it happened in the southern part of the area where they sent Fleo. At the same time, Fleo was astonished by the fact that his level got as high as 300 plus when he didn't slay any monsters. He was also confused by the infinity symbols he was seeing on his status screen, causing him to wonder how he'd blend in now that he was banished from town. However, the system suggested using shape-shifting magic. Using this magic, he transformed himself into a baddie with huge plots, but he realized it would be too much for his weasel brain to handle, so he transformed into a low-budget Jon Snow. Using teleportation magic, he transported himself into the city. Amazed by the skill, he tried to teleport himself back to his original world, but it didn't work, so he decided to make some money from adventuring instead. At the guild, Fleo registered as an adventurer, and as he wondered what job to take, he saw a girl begging some adventurers to escort her into the Dark Forest. However, the men refused to help her, so Fleo offered to help her by instantly teleporting her there. The adventurers around were stunned by the fact that he could use teleportation magic, but their reaction caught him off guard because he thought it was a beginner spell. Just then, a royal knight named Balarosa surrounded him with her party and threatened to cut off his Easter eggs for trying to rizz up a lowly by lying that he has teleportation magic. Fleo said he was just an adventurer, then he offered them a chance to accompany him and the girl to the forest. When they went outside the guild hall, he teleported them to the Delaveza forest, causing a mage in the party named Bolano to ask if he was a reincarnation of Gojo. However, Fleo said he was just a rookie mage, and then Balarosa apologized for calling him a fraud. Suddenly, the party members pointed their weapons at the girl, and Balarosa asked her to show her true form. The girl transformed into a giant wolf monster called a lupine and introduced herself as Fenris, the younger sister of one of the 4 Dark Army generals named Fengaril. She revealed that her brother sent her there to spy on them and released a poison mist which weakened them. Noticing that Fleo was resistant to her poison, she tried to bite his head off, but he dodged and used teleportation magic to send Balarosa's party back to the city. Fleo didn't want to become dog food, so he decided to try out every magic spell he had on Fenris. Fenris charged at Fleo, but he activated a skill called Meteoric Leap, which allowed him to evade her attack by jumping into the air. Fleo was impressed by this, and when Fenris attacked him again, he created an earth wall which blocked her strikes. She tried to clap back, but he overwhelmed her using a whirlwind spell, and she managed to escape using a low-range teleportation spell. She appeared behind him and tried to ambush him, but he used gravitation magic to plant her on the ground. Fenris realized that she couldn't move, and he decided to restrain her as fast as possible, but couldn't figure out the right spell to do so. The system suggested subjugation magic, explaining that it would enable him to control her thoughts and actions by enslaving her. He didn't want to do that, so he asked the system what other magic he could use. However, Fenris tried numerous times to use magic, but the effects were neutralized. and the system kept recommending subjugation magic, but Fleo refused to use it. Fleo boldly stated that he wouldn't bring demi-human slavery to this new world, while Fenris suddenly collapsed on the ground. She told him she was surrendering because she lacked the magic to continue fighting back, and then begged him to slay her. Fleo refused and admitted that he didn't like fighting her in the first place. Fenris reminded him that she was a demon, but Fleo said he didn't care who was human or demon, because he didn't want to unalive someone who had already surrendered. Fenris was stunned by his words, causing her to call him naive, before transforming back into her humanoid form. Fleo's tiny brain was overwhelmed by the sight of Fenris' bare milk factories, so he turned around and asked her why she took that form. She said she merely undid her beast transformation, and he covered up her massive melons with his coat, before telling her that he'd let her leave if she promised not to fight humans again. When he tried to get her some clothes from his item bag, she suddenly collapsed, so the system informed him that Fenris entered a sleep state due to magic depletion. Fleo was relieved that it wasn't anything serious, and he smiled as he watched her sleep. Later that evening, Fleo was seated by a campfire where he realized that he had a lot of different kinds of magic. When he remembered the incident at the guild hall, he wondered why he had powerful teleportation magic, but Fleo suddenly woke up from her slumber. She remembered that she couldn't do anything against Fleo despite being resistant to magic, and this shocked her because she thought humans were a fragile race. She realized that her magic had fully recovered, and when she went outside the tent, she asked Fleo if he had used healing magic on her. When Fleo confirmed that he did, she pointed out that any other human would have performed Diddy moves on her while she was asleep, and she swore never to fight with humans again. She held his hand and blushed, proclaiming that she now acknowledged him as her master because he had immense magical power. Fleo said he had no desire to own a slave, so she tried to unalive herself with her wolf arm, but he stopped her by finally agreeing to let her follow him. A while later, he explained how he was summoned from another world as a hero candidate, only to get tossed into the forest after they discovered that he was a bigger fraud than Megumi. He used shapeshift magic to show her his true face, and he explained that he changed his form to escape the people from the castle who were looking for him. At the same time, the king asked the blonde hero why he allowed their forces to be destroyed by the Dark Army, but he explained that the soldiers panicked and broke formation when a magic beast appeared, causing them to be wiped out. He even claimed that he did everything in his power to save them, and told the king to be grateful that he brought back as many as he did. As he walked away, the king asked his guard how the blonde hero fared on the battlefield, so the guard explained how the blonde fraud remained at the army's rear despite being a hero. He fled while the soldiers were losing their lives and yelled, while pinning all the responsibility on them. As the blonde idiot walked through the hallway, he expressed his frustration over the fact that his skills weren't improving, despite all the training he was doing, and he knew he could only match humans and low-level monsters on the battlefield. Just then, his servant Tsuya showed up, and he told her to follow him so he could get rowdy in the sheets with her that night. The next day, Fleo and Fenris were walking through the street when a random merchant referred to Fenris as Fleo's wife while offering to sell them some fruit. When Fleo said it would be easier for them to pose as a married couple, Fenris immediately got on board with the idea, as she started simping for him. When they arrived at the guild hall, Fleo registered Fenris under the name Rise, and he told her that he wanted her to live as a human going forward. Just then, the guild receptionist informed them of an urgent quest, which involved a large group of monster bears approaching the city. Fleo didn't want to take that quest because he felt that he wasn't strong enough, so Fenris decided to defeat the monster bears by herself to prove how overpowered Fleo was for defeating her. They then teleported to a spot where they saw Ballarossa's team being overwhelmed by monster bears, and when a knight named Blossom was about to become bear food, Fleo Pikachu'd the bears around her. Fenris took out the last bear with a kick, and Ballarossa thanked them for saving her team. He introduced Rise to them as his travel companion, and suddenly a bear tried to attack her from behind. However, Fenris gave the bear a terrifying stare that made it start begging for its life, so she decided to take the bear as a pet, causing Ballarossa's team to be terrified of her. Fleo agreed since it would prevent bears from attacking again, and he placed a collar on it before transforming it into a cute form. He decided to name the bear Saibe, and afterwards, Ballarossa told him that she needed a favor from him. A while later, she asked Fleo to teach her team how to fight because the king had ordered the knights to focus on combat training due to the recent loss the blonde hero's squad suffered. Fenris was about to crash out, but Fleo calmed her down by telling them that she was his wife before agreeing to train them. The party also asked to let him rent out some of their space since it was dangerous to camp outside in that area, and Fenris agreed on his behalf. Elsewhere, a demon named Uliminus informed the demon lord that it was a single person who cast the purification spell, so he ordered her to capture the person at any cost. The next morning, Fleo woke up to the shocking sight of Fenris greeting him by his bedside, and when he asked what she was doing there, she reminded him of the fact that they were married. The previous night, Fenris tried to get him to raid her dungeon, but he refused and she cried because she thought he hated her. Fleo explained that his virgin brain couldn't handle nighttime fun just yet, and he decided to go sleep in the hallway, but she reminded him that Ballarossa's girl group would be suspicious of their relationship if they saw him sleeping there. In the present, just as he wondered if he and Fenris would have to sleep in the same room for the rest of their lives, Fenrir offered to help him change clothes. Ballarossa walked into the room just when Fenris was helping him take off his pajamas, and she immediately immediately ran away. A while later, Balarosa was standing face to face with a boar monster when she tried to scare it off by doing a cool warrior intro. However, the boar didn't flinch, and she went into severe aura debt as she ran away from it like a chicken until Blossom blocked its path with her sword. When the boar tried to attack, Blossom started losing her nerve, so Fenris instructed Bolano to use magic. Bolano crested a magic shield which blocked the boar's attack, and Fleo gave another party member named Baileri the signal to fire an arrow at the boar. Her arrow did 0 damage to the boar, and Belano ran out of magic, so they all started running away from the monster. Some hours later, Fleo showed the party their room, and they were pleased by how bougie it looked. Balarosa asked if it was okay for them to use the room, and Fleo said he bought that room for them with the reward he got for slaying the bears. He said he didn't want them to sleep on the floor any longer since they'd be training with him for a while, and they thanked him for his generosity. Fenris called them to the living room for dinner, and when they got there, Fleo was stunned by the weird steak on the table, so he asked what it was. Fenris said it was the raw meat from the boar they slayed earlier. She told them to dig in, but Fleo said they'd appreciate having the meat cooked. Fenris asked to cook it, but Fleo said he'd handle it himself, and Balarosa offered to help him. Some hours later, they served up a 5-star meal, and it looked so good that Blossom asked Fleo if he made it with magic. Fleo said he made it the normal way with Balarosa's help, while Balarosa said she learned how to make her own meals because she came from a family who couldn't afford to hire a cook. When they tasted the food, they praised it for how delicious it tasted. However, Fenris doubted that the salad would taste good because she was used to eating meat. To her surprise, she ended up loving the salad when she tasted it, and when she tried the meat, it blew her mind. Some hours later, Fleo and Fenris presented a bunch of boar monsters they slayed to the guild. However, the adventurers there started spreading rumors about them because of how impossible the feat was. Just then, the guildmaster Leolith asked to speak with Fleo, so he followed him to a private room while Fleo headed out to take some cooking lessons. In the room, Leolith told Fleo that he'd become the talk of the town because of his overpowered feats. He informed him that he got a request from the king to have him work for the hero, with the prize being that he'd become an honorary knight afterwards. But since Fleo had no interest in fighting demons, he rejected the offer and walked away. He met Fenris outside looking like she'd just wrestled an Elden Ring villain, causing him to assume she'd just fought a high-ranking monster. But the real reason was that she ended up destroying her cooking class with her horrible cooking skills. That evening, the blonde fraud heard from Suya that Fleo and Fenris were clapping overpowered monsters easily, so he asked them to bring Fleo to him so that he'd make him his right-hand man. Sometime later, Fleo told a guard that he had no intention of fulfilling the king's request, and after the knight left, he went to the field where he saw Blossom doing some farm work alongside Saib. Meanwhile, Fenris told Baileri to target some 3-eyed bird monsters in the area with her arrows. This was because she believed that targeting trees all the time wasn't proper practice, but Baileri said she didn't want to harm the cute birds. Fenris tried to bait her until doing it by telling her the bird meat tasted delicious, but she still refused to do it. At the same time, Fleo handed Bolano a magic ring that could increase her magic capacity, and after he left, Fenris threatened her for letting her man put a ring on her finger. Meanwhile, Balarosa was about to get clapped by a random monster, and Fenris destroyed the monster before calling her a pathetic weakling. They had no idea that a strange demi-human girl was watching them from the bushes. A while later, Fenris cooked up an elite meal for the gang, and when Fleo asked her how she learned to do it, she told him she'd been taking cooking classes. She told him to try her curry because her cooking instructor told her it was the way to win a man's heart. However, Fleo ended up loving it, so she hugged him. Meanwhile, Uliminus watched them from the outside until Fenris appeared behind her and dragged her inside. As they drank tea together, she told them she was there to investigate the area, while Fenris told her she was now living there with her husband. When Fleo told Uliminus that he used a purification spell on the forest, she freaked out and said he was the one who wiped out Fengarel's forces. When Fleo asked Fenris if it was true, she told him not to bother about it, because her brother wouldn't want her to pity his death, and added that she'd now fallen in love with Fleo. Uliminus asked to have a mock battle with Fleo, so they went outside the house. When the duel started, she tried to attack him with a dark spell, but he neutralized her attack easily and overwhelmed her with magic spells until she retreated. A while later, Balarosa and her gang told Fleo and Fenris that they wouldn't report their secret to that king, because of the kindness they showed them. Just then, Uliminus showed up with an army of dragons where she tried to get them to retreat, but Fleo barbecued most of the dragons with a single spell, causing the other dragons to retreat. He flexed even further by using an augmentation spell to help Blossom destroy a dragon, and this helped her earn the rank of Dragon Slayer. Elsewhere, Demon Lord Gol heard of Fleo's recent activities and decided to proceed to the next phase of his plan. Some days later, the power couple were standing on a cliff, and there Fleo told Fenris that he'd placed a barrier around the house so that they'd know right away if any demons came in. Fenris said she'd personally beat up Uliminus if she showed up again, and then asked Fleo why he was being nice to her despite her numerous attacks. Fleo said he wasn't trying to be too nice to her, adding that he felt guilty about the fact that he wiped out Fengarel's army. This made Fenris grab his arm and cheerfully ask to go home with him. At home, Blossom was admiring her status screen along with the rest of her gang. She was also excited that she couldn't believe that she'd finally achieved the rank of Dragon Slayer. Balarosa started walking away, and when Bolano asked where she was going, she said she was going to hunt monsters. Meanwhile, Balarosa was jealous because she wanted the title of Dragon Slayer as well, because it was every adventurer's dream. She was then approached by a strange man who claimed that he was there to see an old friend. However, she felt there was something sus about him, because he was lightly equipped in a forest filled with magical beasts. She then asked him if his friend was Philo or Fenris, and when the man said Fenris, she accused him of being a member of the Dark Army. With her sword pointed at his face, asked him what he wanted from a girl who cut ties with the Dark Army. She claimed that he'd have to face her in battle if he gave a wrong answer, so the man confirmed that he was part of the Dark Army. However, he said he came with no bad intentions because he was only there to check on Fenris. He also agreed to leave the area, and before he left, he told Balarosa to ask Fenris if she'd like to have a talk with him about her past sometime, after which he introduced himself as Gozal. After he left, Fleo and Fenris came to check on Balarosa, and when she told them about her encounter with Gozal, Fenris said it was a fake name because the man she just talked to was actually the demon lord Gol. Hearing this, Balarosa's Smurf-sized brain literally had a meltdown because she realized she'd have been brutalized if she hadn't maintained composure. The next day, Gol visited Philo and Fenris at the house with his Gozal disguise still on, and when Balarosa saw him, she immediately lost her cool. During breakfast, Fenris asked Gol if he was there to get revenge, but Gol said he was there to recruit Fleo to join his Dark Army. Fleo immediately declined his offer, which made Gol ask him why he chose to live there instead of serving King Clyrode, who desperately needed his power. Fleo said he didn't think it made sense to side with humanity just because he's a human, adding that he didn't know why they were fighting the war because he wasn't from that world. Gol asked why no one explained it to him, but Fenris said there was no reason to talk about it because her husband didn't want to fight. Gol revealed that the war between humans and demons had persisted for 500 years since the first Demon Lord's ascent. He also added that the first Demon Lord came from another world to take over their world. He was accepted by demons who, at the time, were oppressing humans, and this led to war between the demons who accepted a foreign ruler and the humans who rejected him. Gol said the longer the war dragged on, the more ill will accumulated, implying that it wouldn't be easy to stop the war in its current state. When Fleo asked him if he'd like to stop the war, he revealed that he had no interest in ruling the world. However, he emitted a terrifying dark aura while stating that he would never allow the demon race to fall at the hands of humans. He once again asked Fleo to join him, but Fleo said he had no intentions of joining either side, causing Gol to laugh. As Gol made his way out, he told Fleo that he'd be back, and he was impressed by the fact that Balarosa wasn't fazed by his presence. The next morning, Balarosa went downstairs and was stunned when she saw Demon Lord Gol feasting on Fenris' dish alongside the couple. He invited her to join them, but the nightwear she was putting on made her shy, so she ran away. Some hours later, she snuck outside the house, only to meet Gol waiting for her at the door, and despite saying he wanted to talk to her, she still ran away from him. For the next couple of days, she kept running away whenever he approached her, and continued for a while. Meanwhile, King Clyrode got word from his knight that a demon had been frequently visiting Fleo's home. The king was ticked off because he thought Fleo had ditched him to join the demon army. However, his daughter stopped him from sending guards after him before suggesting a proper conversation with him. Clyrode told her to shut up, and when the hero arrived, he asked the king to give him soldiers so he'd force Fleo into siding with them. In the demon realm, Gol told Uliminus that he was going to Fleo's home, and when she tried to warn him that it was dangerous, he said he was a more understanding person than the half-wit king who wouldn't listen to him. When she told him their army was awaiting his commands, he said he was considering the right time to move their troops, but this made her worry because his attempts to win Fleo over were making some demons in his army start to doubt him. A while later, Fleo was telling Fenris about his plans to make a business out of selling shields made of dragon scales. However, she was worried and asked him if he chose to reject the king's offer because of her. Fleo said it was because he didn't want to fight anyone he didn't have to, explaining that he didn't want to hurt anyone, and this made her admire him for his kindness even more. Just then, they heard a knock on the door, and it turned out to be the hero who had shown up with a large army to force him to become his subordinate. Despite the hero's corny speech, Fleo rejected him, and when the blonde goofball started threatening the girls, Fleo decided to fight him. He decided to take the fight elsewhere because he didn't want to cause a mess in his yard, and Balarosa's party offered to follow him to the location of the fight. However, Fleo threw a curveball by transporting himself, leaving the girls and their entire house away from that area while the heroes stared in shock. When Gol showed up, he thought the house was destroyed by the hero and his army, so he ordered his demons to attack the kingdom of Clyrode with their full might.
You have brought this carnage on yourselves! Hear me, my dark army! An all-out attack on the kingdom of Clyrode!
When the demons started approaching, the blonde fraud immediately ran away and left his soldiers to deal with them. Meanwhile, Fleo and the girls appeared in a different town called Haotao, which was west of the capital. They were also relieved and pleased because neither the Demon Lord nor the hero would be able to find them there. As the war between the Dark Army and the Human Knights raged on, a knight informed the king that the Dark Army was breaking through their defense networks one by one. He also added the northern stronghold's magic barrier would soon be shattered. When the king asked what the hero was doing, he said he'd locked himself in the southern stronghold again, so the king ordered him to bring the pathetic hero to him at once. Just then, an elderly mage suggested gathering all the mages to cast a purification spell, but the king hesitated until another general told him that they'd have no chance at victory if their northern stronghold fell. Elsewhere, Demon Lord Gol was informed by a dark squad leader named Greenilano that they were ready, so he told Luminous to withdraw the army. She asked him why they were retreating when they were so close to victory, so he explained that they couldn't afford to get caught up in the purification spell, which the mages were casting. Meanwhile, the mages said the incantation to cast the purification spell, causing the entire capital to be covered in a glowing magic circle. When Fleo returned home, Fenris asked him if he found a shop to do business with, and he told her he was still checking out the many shops in Haotao to find the right one. Blossom said she was thinking about selling the vegetables she grew on her farm because she didn't want to keep living with them for free, while Bylary said she was thinking about raising horses and renting them in carts. Blossom explained to him that Bylary used to look after war horses at the castle, so he gave her permission to use the stable at the house. With this, she swore to contribute to that household budget as much as she could. Balirosa and Balano felt useless because they had no talents. However, Fenris comforted them, saying she had no problem taking care of them because she was the pack leader. Fleo then decided to divide the household chores, allowing them to work on their magic and swordsmanship without worrying about the house. Elsewhere, the Elder Mage informed the princess that the Dark Army retreated because of their purification spell. She also claimed that they had 3 months before the spell deactivated, which meant that they were safe for the time being. However, the princess was worried because many of their mages were comatose after having depleted their magic, so they needed at least 2 or 3 months to recover. She said her father is among these unconscious mages, and claimed that she'd carry out her royal duties as ruler until he wakes up. As a first order of business, she removed the blonde fraud from the position of hero because instead of fighting, he chose to hide when the kingdom was in danger. The Elder Mage asked if they'd have to summon another hero, but she said they don't have enough mages to do the summoning, and asked them to bring the oracle. A while later, Blondie was informed by a guard that he'd been dismissed as a hero. He tried to argue, saying the king was the one who chose him, but the guard tossed his bag on the floor and walked away. That night, Fleo told Fenris that he was grateful to her because she did everything around the house. But before he could finish his romantic speech, she got bored and slept off. The next morning, Fleo was shocked when Fenris asked him out on a date. The girls also gave her an assist by telling them that they'd handle all the house chores while they enjoyed themselves. As a result, Fleo and Fenris spent the next couple of hours doing fun activities together, and when they arrived at the market, Fleo offered to buy a gift for Fenris since she always helped him out. This got her excited because she'd never received a present before, and after searching through multiple shops. For an attractive present, she found some attractive brooches which caught her eye. Fleo placed a blue one on her neck and said she looked beautiful in it, so she thanked him. That evening, the girls watched as Fenris gawked over the brooch. Fleo got her, and they got jealous because their romantic lives were trash. That night, Fleo woke up and he was surprised when he saw Fenris cuddling him. He tried to ask her what she was doing, but her mind had already drifted to La La Land, so he tucked her in. The next morning, the blonde fraud was digging through a treasure chest when Suya asked him what he intended to do about his situation. He said he refused to live the life of a commoner, and he searched desperately for something that he could use in rivaling Fleo in power. Just then, he heard a voice which promised to give him power if he set her free. He followed it and led him through a secret door into a dark room where a sword was planted on the ground. She told him she'd grant any wish he wanted if he drew the sword. However, Tsuya was worried because she couldn't hear the system. The blonde fraud lifted the sword and suddenly a lady appeared in the room. She introduced herself as Hiya, the jinn who commands the origin of light and darkness, and he told her that he was the one who freed her. She offered to grant him 3 wishes, which made him smile as he made his first wish. In the castle, the princess met up with Mistress Ashura, the oracle, and informed her that the purification spell was the only thing protecting the kingdom. She added that they needed to take the next step, and as they talked, a magic collar suddenly appeared on the neck of everyone in the room, and the princess ordered the guards to seize the intruder in the treasury room. Ashura explained that the collars on their neck was called a collar of sacrifice, and it appeared on the neck of a jinn's victims to remove their heads in exchange for granting wishes. The princess explained how the jinn was sealed after a king, in the past, tried to sacrifice his people to defeat the demon lord, adding that they had until dawn for the jinn to grant the wish. When the oracle told them to find the true hero who was currently in the west, the princess decided to go herself because she didn't want to divide the knights who were defending the kingdom. Meanwhile, Fleo sold his dragon shield to a merchant who agreed to link him up with a dealer for his other products. And afterwards, he walked home with Fenris and Balarosa. On the way home, they met Hia, who tried to fulfill the former hero's wish by slaying Fleo, but Fenris sacrificed herself to save him. After blocking Hia's magic attacks, Fleo tried to heal Fenris, but it didn't work because the injury was beyond his healing ability. Hia then blasted them with a magic light spell called Origin of Light and Darkness, but it did no damage at all, and Fleo was determined to make her pay for hurting his sweet Fenris. Fleo remembered the day Fenris swore her loyalty to him. He felt guilty for failing to protect her because she continued loving him, and even after finding out that he was the one who unalived her brother. When the system told him that he'd gained the Origin of Light and Darkness spell, he left Fenris on the ground and swore that he'd make Hia pay. The system then activated a spell which rewound time to around them, allowing Fenris' body to return to a completely healed state, leaving Hia surprised that a mere human could use time magic. She tried to question Fleo, but he sent her flying with a punch before she could finish her question. With blood dripping from her face, she asked him how he dared to challenge the one who has mastered all of the world's magic, but he responded by stomping her on the ground. He told her to shut her mouth, but she blasted him with dark magic, which he broke through easily before grabbing her head. When she assessed his abilities, she was shocked when she saw that every skill was infinite, and he bashed her head into a wall. She soon realized that defensive magic was pointless against him, as he sent her flying with a brutal uppercut. Meanwhile, Fenris woke up and she was surprised by the fact that her wounds were healed completely, so Balarosa informed her that it was Fleo who saved her with magic. However, she saw Fleo treating Hia like a punching bag, and she couldn't recognize her man. As he continued bashing her head with his fists, Fenris was pleased that her man was being so ruthless for her. This was more fun since physical attacks were meant to be ineffective against jinns, who could use all forms of magic. She remembered him telling her when they fought that he didn't like fighting, and he didn't want to slay her because she'd already surrendered. Eventually, Fleo punched Hia to the ground and started choking her out. She tried to beg him to spare her, but he refused because she dared harm Fenris. However, Fenris grabbed him from behind and begged him to stop. When he dropped Hia on the floor, Fenris told him she felt fortunate that he was getting brutal for her. With tears streaming from her eyes, she brought up the fact that he let her live because he didn't want to slay someone who had surrendered, adding that it would make her sad to see him lose his kindness because of her. Meanwhile, the princess arrived at a forest along with her knights. However, the mage who teleported them there said he couldn't follow them to the next town because he'd run out of magic. The princess told her knight to ensure the mages got proper rest, and while she started to think of strategies to find the true hero, the collars on their necks suddenly shattered. The knight asked how it was possible, and the princess said it was because the jinn failed to grant the wish. At the same time, the knights knocked the door of the treasury room while ordering the fraud hero to surrender to that princess. He started to wonder if the jinn was horsing around when she said she'd grant him 3 wishes, and suddenly a spirit took over Tsuya's body. She said it was her first flesh body in hundreds of years and transformed Tsuya's clothing into a sorceress costume, before thanking him for freeing the jinn for her. She used magic to bring him to his knees and introduced herself as Damalinus, the grand magus of the night, before promising to give him the power he desired. The blonde idiot transformed into a giant monster, and she sat on his shoulder as he marched through the castle. She said she'd bring divine judgment upon the foolish nobles who sealed her away. However, she noticed that the nobles had escaped using teleportation magic, but she swore that she wouldn't let them escape. Later that day, Fleo healed Hia, and immediately she woke up. She started begging him to forgive her. When she realized she'd been healed, Fleo told her she was only okay because Fenris ended up unscathed after the whole thing. When Balarosa asked what they should do with her, since she was too overpowered for the knights to handle, he considered sealing her up again, but decided to peek inside her head to find out why she attacked them. When he looked, he saw the blonde idiot making his wish, and Hia was stunned that he could use memory projection magic, which was a kind of magic that only she could use before. He pointed out that she was a jinn who granted wishes for a massive price, which meant that the same thing might happen if he returns her to the castle. Fenris decided that she'd become Fleo's servant, and although Bro tried to debate, she stopped him before explaining that it would be best to have her around so that they could keep an eye on her. Fleo asked her if she was okay with it because Hia hurt her. However, she said she was frustrated that her lack of strength allowed Hia to get the better of her. Fleo extended a hand to Hia and promised to forgive her if she promised to never harm a human again. Hia was very intrigued by Fleo, so she took his hand and swore that she'd tend to every desire he had from that point onwards. Fleo apologized for taking things too far with her, but he had no idea that his ruthlessness had successfully rizzed her up. Fleo tried to use time magic to fix up the damaged road, but Hia told him never to use that magic again because, although the time manipulation worked for people within the affected range, it caused unforeseen accidents for those outside the range. Hia said she was capable of narrowing the accident so that would only affect one human, adding that it's not the kind of magic humans were meant to use. She also told Fleo that his skills were infinite, and then informed him that he was capable of using a unique magic called Epiphany that allowed him to gain spells which hit him. When they arrived home, Hia introduced herself to the other girls, however they started panicking, so Balarosa told them Fleo would keep her in check. When he got to his room, Fenris asked him if he planned to go back to his original world with the new jinn magic he acquired, but he said he wouldn't because his world would treat her harshly. He then asked her to become his wife for real because he could no longer live without her, and she agreed, so he kissed her. Just when things were about to get spicy, Hia entered the room and they both yelled at her for ruining their baby-making ritual. A while later, the princess told a demi-human merchant that she was looking for a mage powerful enough to defeat an entire army on his own, but the merchant said he had no idea where to find him. At home, Fleo and the girls were enjoying a feast, and Fenris said Hia helped her with the cooking. Hia said Fenris didn't allow her to do the cooking using only her magic, and Fenris said it was because she wanted to cook for her husband by herself. Some hours later, Blossom was doing some farm work alongside Saib, and when Saib transformed into his beast form, they both went into overdrive. Meanwhile, Bailery, who was cleaning the stables, was depressed about the fact that it was the only thing she could do to contribute to the house budget. Suddenly, the horses started licking her all over, causing her to scream. At the same time, Bolano remembered how Fleo taught her a flame spell, so she decided to learn more spells so that she wouldn't waste the opportunity Fleo gave her. Just then, she overheard someone screaming for help outside, and when she went there, she saw a magic horse beast which suddenly charged at her. After she blocked it off with a magic shield, Balarosa apologized to her for the inconvenience before pulling out her sword to slay it. When the horse beast started trampling Blossom's crops, the girls told Saib to take his pet form, and after he did, Bailery managed to take control of the magic horse using cowboy tactics. She asked Balarosa if they were allowed to use the vast land surrounding the property, to which Balarosa responded that they'd be free to use it and if they bought it from the local lord who owns all the lands in the area. Meanwhile, Fleo and Fenris were having a walk through town, and Fenris was excited because she'd finally get a chance to get as lovey-dovey with her new husband as much as she wanted now that there was no one else around. They eventually arrived at a merchant's shop where Fleo sold him an armor plate made out of salamander skin, as well as some crystals called lightstones which were rare but worth a fortune. Meanwhile, Fenris was fawning over her awesome husband outside when suddenly the skies blackened as Damalinus appeared with her monster. When she saw the princess and her guards, she used a wind spell to blow them away. Meanwhile, the power couple met up with Hia, who said she'd rush there from home as fast as she could when she sensed a dark presence in the area. She informed them that the monster was a human, who had only taken that form because of the magic of Damalinus. Long ago, Damalinus ruled as the most powerful mage in the magical kingdom of Clyrode, but she sullied her hands with dark magic and was defeated by the hero of the present. After she died, her mental state remained active and was sealed within the pedestal that held the sword Hia was sealed in. Hia said it was her fault that Damalinus escaped her seal, and she asked Fleo for permission to take her down. Fleo permitted her to face Damalinus, but instructed her to put the lives of the townsfolk as a top priority, while informing Fenris that they'd aid in evacuating people in the area. At the same time, Damalinus had the princess cornered with only one timid knight standing in front of her. As she tried to end her, Hia made a dramatic entrance by stopping her monster's attack with a magic explosion. When she asked Hia what she was doing there, she said she was there to eliminate her for threatening the safety of the city. Damalinus tried to attack her with a lightning spell, but she blocked with the wave of a hand before explaining that no magic of their world had any effect on her. Hia claimed that Damalinus was no match for her, so Damalinus tried to prove him wrong by attacking with dark magic spears and her beast at the same time, but Hia blew her attack away with ease. Determined to win the fight, Damalinus cast a spell which transformed the beast into the colossal titan that marched around the city until it surprisingly shrunk back to its regular size. Damalinus couldn't believe what just happened, so Fleo told Hia that he used release magic on the monster because he felt the size was an issue. She apologized for putting him through trouble and asked for permission to finish Damalinus off. While Damalinus was surprised that her magic was undone by a human, Hia cast a dark spell which expelled Damalinus from the body of Tsuya and turned the blonde hero back to his human form as well. Damalinus was now trapped in a marble, but Hia swallowed it before telling Fleo that she'd make sure Damalinus uses her magic to serve him. Just then, the princess approached Fleo and introduced herself as Elizabeth before thanking him for saving the kingdom. She also apologized for all the hardships he endured because of the king and the former hero, and Fleo was shocked when he heard her call Blondie an ex-hero, so she explained that he'd been relieved of his duties for being a fraud. Elizabeth begged him to come to the castle with her as a hero. She claimed that it was the gods that made them find each other, but Fleo told her to give that job to someone who was more heroic than him. He told her he only wished to continue the peaceful life he was living with his wife, and Fenris was pleased to hear this. When they arrived home, Bilary and Blossom told them about their plans to expand the property so they can do more farm work while rearing magical beasts as well, which would allow Fenris and Fleo to be completely free at home. Fleo agreed to talk to the domain lord about it, but the adventurer girls said they wanted to handle the negotiation and purchase themselves. However, when Fleo showed them the price of lands, they freaked out, so he offered to pay for the lands on the condition that they pay him 30% of all the profits they made from the business. Some minutes later at the farm, Fleo suggested that Blossom start growing a wider variety of crops on her land, and he offered to help her out with that. Blossom said she didn't want her help because she relied on magic for everything, but Hia pointed out that she could use magic to make the weather more favorable for her crops. Bolano then showed up and revealed to everyone that she became a teacher at a magic school, causing them to congratulate her. After a bit of motivation from Fleo, Blossom finally agreed to use magic on her farm, and as Hia applied magic to the land, Fleo told Fenris of his dream to open a shop in that world. Fenris said she'd always be there to support him, and he gave her a wedding ring which made her very happy. Meanwhile, the blonde fraud and Suya were in prison, ranting like miserable idiots. Sometime later, Balarosa was dressed in a dark magic gown, and as Ulaminus congratulated her, the demon lord showed up in a tuxedo. He told her she'd be his wife from that day onwards, causing her to freak out while the demons in the area cheered for them. As Gol rizzed her up with romantic words and leaned forward for a kiss, Balarosa woke up screaming on her bed as she was relieved that it was just a dream. However, she wondered why she was having dreams about the Dark Lord when she didn't even want to think about him, so she screamed out of embarrassment. The next morning, she was in the kitchen with Fenris, who noticed that she was looking pale. She explained that she'd barely gotten any sleep, so Fenris assumed that she was lovesick because Lupines believed that people see their crushes in their dreams after falling in love, but Balarosa yelled that she was wrong. Just then, the other girl showed up and started accusing her of craving the Demon Lord's meat, so she denied their claims by reminding them that he only came by to see Fleo. However, Blossom pointed out that he always left in a hurry whenever she wasn't there. In response, Balarosa said they were wrong because she felt he was still mad at her for raising a sword against him when they first met. Blossom claimed she believed Balarosa could talk the Demon Lord into anything, and maybe even break the wall between species to be one-bedroom buddies like Fleo and Fenris. Just then, Fleo showed up and they got an alert from the system that a monster had entered the city. Hia said she sensed the power of demons as well, and when Balarosa asked if the area was in danger, Fleo said they only needed to keep an eye on the city for a while since the barrier wasn't broken yet. Meanwhile, the Elder Mage informed Elizabeth that the majority of the coins Fleo donated were road coins issued by the castle, and she wondered how he got his hands on them because road coins weren't issued to the general public. The Elder Mage told her about how they gave coins to a young man who was summoned by mistake and banished to Delavesa Forest, and he presumed that Fleo and the young man are the same person. Elizabeth realized that he'd never agree to become their hero because of the trashy treatment they gave him, and she decided to apologize to him so they could earn his pardon. Just then, a guard informed them that the blonde hero and Tsuya had escaped their cells, so she ordered him to search for them with the aid of the Vigilante Corps and the adventurers across the kingdom. Some hours later, the Knights of the Kingdom searched all over the forest for the escaped prisoners, and after they left, Blonde Boy and Tsuya came out of the bush they were hiding in. He ranted about how he was being branded a criminal for the jinn's actions, so Tsuya reminded him that he stole an item bag from the treasury. He claimed that the money he took wasn't stolen, and was rather the reward money he was owed for his services as the hero. When he looked inside the bag, he was shocked that there was no money in it, but he found a treasure chest which had a shovel and a drilling device in it. Just then, the guards heard their voice and ran in their direction, so they hid in a hole which the blonde hero dug for them. Inside the hole, Tsuya was impressed by the fact that he managed to dig a deep hole in an instant, but he wondered how they'd escape from the hole. In the demon realm, Ulaminus informed Gol that she was yet to find Fleo and the others, despite sending her intelligence corps all around the area, so she concluded that he'd fled to another country. However, Gol said it was impossible because teleportation magic only allowed one to travel to places they've visited before, adding that Fleo couldn't have gone far because he only just reincarnated into their world recently. Ulaminus advised that they shouldn't prioritize the search over their army's advance. This was because they'd be able to take over the kingdom, despite the purification spell, if they launched a full-scale attack immediately. Just then, Gol stopped her yapping by staring her dead in the eyes and reminding her that Fleo could use purification magic all by himself, which meant that they needed to gain his favor before they'd stand a chance at winning the war. Ulaminus still argued, so he patted her head and told her that he found no meaning in forced sacrifices of their comrades in order to take over the human realm. A few hours later, a demon baddie who overheard the conversation informed her master Uwagardi about Gol's decision. This made him upset as his brother was not only refusing to advance the army but also trying to recruit a human. The baddie told him that the human in question had Goku-level powers, but Ugarte said they needed to destroy him instead of befriending him. She said he was right, and Wugard decided to take the throne from his brother so that he'd defeat the humans once and for all. At the same time, Fleo and Fenris were doing some shopping in town, and they got to a point where they saw an old lady's store closing down. When Fleo asked her about it, she said she had troubles getting some new suppliers at her age, and when he asked what happened to the old ones, she said their stores were destroyed during the last war. As the power couple walked back, Fenris felt bad about how badly the war affected the people, so Fleo calmed her down by reminding her that humans were resilient. Just then, Balarosa showed up and offered to treat them to lunch as a way of thanking them for their training, which led to her recent increase in rank. They accepted, but Hiya suddenly showed up and said someone with immense magic power was approaching them. Hiya was about to go into battle mode, but Fenris stopped her when they saw that it was Gol. They all ate together in a restaurant, and Balarosa lost her cool when Gol said he wanted to talk to her personally. When he admitted that he was watching them because he wanted to recruit Fleo, Balarosa yelled at him. Hiya then revealed that it was the dark mist called Melicium in demons' bodies that made them different from humans. Gol apologized for making them uncomfortable and promised Balarosa that he'd see her again before leaving. They later reunited with the rest of the team, and as they walked home, Fleo suddenly hugged Fenris from behind. Meanwhile, the blonde hero and Suya climbed to the top of the hole, but Bro got distracted by the sight of her dump truck, causing him to fall back inside. Sometime later, Fenris cooked up another 7-star meal for the gang, and as they feasted on it, Balarosa pointed out that Fenris had improved significantly. Fenris said it was because her teacher, Mileno, taught her some extra special family dishes after she told her about her marriage. Just then, they heard a knock on the door, and when the couple went to answer, they saw that Elizabeth had arrived with an army of guards. When he asked what she was doing there, she apologized before calling him by his original name, Fleo. When they went inside, Balarosa served Elizabeth some tea, after which the princess asked the girls to leave so she could have a private conversation with Fleo. However, Fenris said she wouldn't leave, so Fleo told Elizabeth to say wherever she wanted in his wife's presence. After the others left, Elizabeth went on her knees and apologized to Fleo for all the injustices the kingdom committed against him, particularly the spells cast on the item bag he was given and his banishment to the Dark Forest. He asked her to raise her head and pointed out that he was now Fleo, a humble merchant, and no longer the hero they once summoned. She asked if he couldn't accept her apology, so Fleo explained that there was nothing he could do, even though she apologized 1,000,000 times. He then asked her the real reason she came there, and the airhead princess brought out a magical map which showed where Clyrod's army was deployed. She explained that the glowing lights on the map represent the stones that each unit leader carried, and he asked her why she was giving him such top-secret information. She revealed that the effects of the purification magic cast around the castle were about to wear off, and said the Dark Army would resume its advance once it did. She also noted that their mages were yet to fully recover after casting the spell, and even though they used their geographical advantage to place their available troops in strategic locations, there were certain towns they couldn't leave unguarded. Elizabeth then asked Fleo for his assistance in protecting those towns. However, Fenris said she was being selfish for trying to involve her husband, who hates wars, despite all the harsh treatment they've already shown him. Elizabeth said the king, who had been bedridden since the purification magic was cast, would soon awaken and assumed that her father would send troops after Fleo for having connections with the demons. On hearing this, Fenris asked if she was trying to threaten them, but Elizabeth said she was only doing what she could as active ruler of the kingdom. When Fleo asked her what she'd do, she revealed that she planned to hold her father accountable for his defamation of the true hero and his appointment of a false hero by having Clyrod abdicate the throne. On hearing this, Fenris said she was only trying to use Fleo to install herself as ruler. However, Fleo told his wife to calm down, and then asked Elizabeth if she was trying to get a guarantee that he wouldn't side with the demons. She admitted he'd seen right through her, and said she trusted him not to tell the demons their secrets before asking him once again to aid them. Somewhere in the kingdom, the knights were searching for the false hero and Suya, but they couldn't find the duo because they were hidden behind a bush. When Suya got hungry, the trash boy handed her some snacks and said he was surprised that she chose to follow him. Suya said she could say the same about him, because it would have been easier for him to escape without her slowing him down, but she claimed that she didn't want to live as a refugee forever. She started glazing him until a spider monster suddenly appeared and captured both of them. Just then, the baddie demon appeared and said she'd use them as a sacrifice. That night, Fenris asked Fleo if she could join him in bed, and when he said yes, she sat beside him and asked if he was thinking about what Elizabeth told him. He said he couldn't just sit around doing nothing when he knew there were towns that might suffer from the war. He added that he'd been thinking about what he really wanted to do in that world. So he revealed to Fenris that he wanted to create a world where their descendants would live freely with humans and demons. In response, she said she knew he was capable of pulling off the impossible and offered to support him on his new goal. The next day, an alarm was raised in the city, and it was announced that a large demon army was headed towards the kingdom. In a forest somewhere, some demons were about to attack a girl, but Fleo saved her and deployed a magic barrier which blocked out the demons. The demons asked who they were, and Fleo introduced himself and Fenris as the guardians of the city. He told the demons he wouldn't hurt them if they surrendered, but the demons chose to challenge him instead. Fenris said they couldn't break through the barrier, but then a large demon showed up and said he'd break it. Fenris informed Fleo that the large demon was a Cyclops who worked with Gol's brother Ugard, and when the demon called her brother a weakling, she told Fleo that she wanted to face him herself. Although Fleo agreed, he allowed her to face him on the condition that she doesn't slay him. She then went outside the barrier and avoided the Cyclops attacks before slashing him multiple times. Next, she leaped into the air and used her own version of Sasuke's Rinnegan to switch positions with him multiple times until his weapon landed on his head. While he was on the ground, she used gravity magic to impale all 4 of his limbs with trees, and he ordered his demons to attack her. When they charged at her, Fleo easily restrained them and healed the Cyclops before telling him to retreat. The demons hesitated, so he intimidated them with his overwhelming aura, causing them to retreat. After they left, Fenris asked Fleo if he made the right decision because the demons would surely come back if they were ordered to, but Fleo said being more brutal with them would only fuel the hatred between demons and humans even more. Just then, some humans showed up and asked Fleo who Fenris was. He introduced her as his partner, and the girl he saved earlier thanked him. He told them to be more grateful to the princess before riding away with Fenris. At the castle, a knight informed the princess and the elder mage that a masked man saved the people. As he told them to be thankful to her, she immediately figured out that it was Fleo. Meanwhile, Gol watched Fleo and Fenris from above and wondered why Ugard acted without his permission. Just then, Grainel showed up to inform him that Ugard had started a rebellion. In the demon realm, the baddie demon, Fufun, informed Ugard that he could sacrifice the false hero and Suya to the evil god to ensure his victory against Gol. Sometime later, Fleo and Fenris were having tea in the living room with Gol and Uliminas, and when Fleo asked what brought them there, Gol asked him to let him stay at their home for a while. When Fleo asked what happened, he said he'd tell them everything that happened to them. Earlier on, one of the Dark Army's 4 generals named Yor told Uliminas that they were going to act as witnesses to the duel between Gol and Ugard, and she reminded her that her job was to catch and imprison traitors. However, the general said they only approved the duel because they believed it would open Gol's eyes. Another general named Mugi agreed with her statement, and also pointed out that Gol had been acting weird lately. When Uliminas asked another general named Slape how he felt about the matter, he said he believed that no one but Lord Gol was worthy of the Demon Lord's throne. However, he pointed out that it was necessary for him to show his power because there were demons within their forces that were speaking of rebellion. When they entered the throne room, Yor told Ugard that he was getting ahead of himself by sitting on the throne since it still belonged to Gol, but Fufun told her it didn't matter because it would be his soon. Uliminas told Fufun that she was trampling on Gol's kindness, but this only made Fufun rage bait her until she charged in to attack Ugard. However, her attack did 0 damage to the wannabe king who punched her away, just before a horn from the ground flew towards him. However, Fufun blocked the horn and complimented Uliminas for being great at underhanded tactics. When she tried to finish her off, Grainel appeared in front of her, and Gol asked her to take care of Uliminas. After Grainel left with Uliminas, Ugard challenged Gol to a duel for the throne, but Gol said he had no intention of engaging in a meaningless fight with him. Ugard pointed out that Gol's own subordinates endorsed the duel because they felt he was getting weak, and Gol asked him which of his actions he considered foolish. Ugard said he'd been visiting the human town repeatedly to engage in pleasures, while Fufun added that Gol chose to withdraw their army when they were close to victory. She also said he'd rejected all their suggestions to resume their advance, which made them doubt how serious he is about their conquest. Gol then asked Ugard if he was the one who sent their troops to march on Clyrod without his consent, and after he admitted to it, he asked the Internal Four if they agreed with Ugard. They all silently agreed, so Gol unleashed his true power for a brief moment before announcing that he was relinquishing ownership of the Demon Ring. He handed the ring to Ugard and said he was retiring from the position of Demon Lord because he had no reason to cling to the role now that everyone doubted him. When Ugard tried to approach him, he kicked him, causing him to fly through several walls until he landed outside the castle. He said it was payback for what he did to Uliminas. Then he apologized to the Internal Four for all the trouble he caused and walked away from the castle. Back in the present, Uliminas told Fleo that they were flat broke and had nowhere else to go. However, he said he'd need to ask the others first before making a decision. Just then, Balarosa showed up and was shocked to see Gol in their living room. Fleo asked her what she thought about having Gol as a house guest, but her brain completely shut down while Gol kept on teasing her. Some minutes later, the rest of the girls were seated in the living room, looking all tense. Gol told them not to stiffen up because he was no longer the Demon Lord, but this came as a shock to them. He then explained that it wouldn't be right for him to live in the demon territory since he dropped his role as Demon Lord, which was why he was asking that favor from the only humans he considered friends. Blossom brought up the fact that the demon army attacked Clyrode a few days ago, but Fenris informed them that it was the work of Ugard, and Gol also swore that he'd never harm any of them. Fenris then asked how Gol was flat broke when she was with him, so Uluminus explained that Gol gave all their money to the intelligence corps she was leading, who left the Dark Army after the whole commotion. Gol said he did it to reward them for keeping the damages suffered by their army to a minimum. However, Uluminus started getting salty towards him, so he explained that he gave up the throne because he didn't support the way they wanted to handle things. He brought up the fact that Fleo halted conflict between humans and demons during the recent attack, revealing that there were things he had to do in a similar manner. When Fleo asked the girls for their opinion on Gol staying with them, all of them agreed apart from Balarosa, who tried to remind them that he was the former Demon Lord. However, Fenris and Saib sweet-talked her into agreeing. Sometime later, Fleo showed Gol the collection of weapons he made, and he noticed that shields made of dragon scales. Fleo explained the spells he cast on the shields, and Gol praised him for being a bigger genius than Senku. That night, everyone shared a meal together by a campfire while Balarosa watched from the side. Much later, the power couple met Balarosa by the balcony where she told them that she didn't feel it was right for her to keep staying with them because she was useless unlike. She also admitted that she couldn't come to terms with living with Gol, even though she knew he wasn't evil because she'd seen countless soldiers die on the battlefield during wars with demons. On hearing this, Fleo told her not to throw away her feelings because it was better to accept people's way of life rather than living in fear because of them. Fenris also chimed in, adding that she wasn't useless because she made the delicious cookies they were eating. The next day, Balarosa threatened Uluminus and Gol that she'd destroy them if they harm anyone, and Gol thanked her for accepting him. In the demon realm, the blonde hero ran away with a bag of magic items he stole from the demon castle. He intended to sell them in the city, but Suya reminded him that they were wanted criminals. In the demon realm, Uigard asked the demon generals how they kept getting defeated by humans, despite being a stronger species, so Fufun explained that there were traps set on every route the Dark Army was using to advance, which prevented them from getting close to Clyrode. Uigard decided to crush the humans with an army so large that no trap could slow them down, and when Fufun asked how they'd amass an army that large, he sent her flying with a punch before telling her to cook up a plan for before the next meeting. After he left, Mugi pointed out that Uigard was moving forward thoughtlessly like a blind toddler, which made him a less competent leader than Gol, who did thorough research before proceeding with any plan. Yor also reminded them that the intelligence corps left the army along with Uluminus and asked what they'd do about the situation. Sleep said morale among their officers were dropping, and he predicted that the Dark Army would soon fall, but Fufun told them not to worry because she had a plan. When Yor asked what it was, she said they'd start by holding a social gathering to boost the morale of the soldiers. Elsewhere, Fleo was announced as the first place winner in a market game, and this got Fenris excited because the first prize was a voucher for a hot spring resort trip for the both of them. When the shopkeeper presented them with the voucher, she explained that the trip was actually meant for a group of people ranging from 3 to 15 in number, but thus made her so disappointed that she asked for a change of prize. Sometime later, the entire gang arrived at the hot spring resort. Immediately, Fenris started moping about how she wouldn't get to spend some alone time with her hubby at the resort, so Fleo told her they could use the trip as a way for them to get to know Gol and Uluminus. While the others were discussing the benefits of the 7 hot springs at the resort, Bylary mentioned something about fertility, which made Fenris imagine herself carrying Fleo's baby. When they arrived at the inn, the lady in charge welcomed them and handed them some yukatas to put on. Fenris secretly asked one of the workers to tell her which of the hot springs boosted fertility, and the lady said it was the Yanagi bath before giving her a map. A while later, Blossom bumped into Uigard at the resort. He wanted to pummel her for it, but Fufun stopped him and told her to carry on. After Blossom left, Uigard started ranting, so Fufun reminded him that the reason they were disguising themselves as humans was to bolster their officers' morale, which plummeted after their last defeat, adding that they'd ruin it all if they caused a commotion. Just then, the other demon generals walked by, and they all expressed how excited they were to explore the resort. However, Fufun reminded them to keep their Melicium suppressing necklace on at all times. Meanwhile, Fenris, Uluminus, and Gol were watching them from the corner, and Gol wondered if he should have had meetings like that when he was in charge. Fenris warned them not to let Uigard and his men notice them, but Gol said he wanted to say hello to them. She pointed out that he and his brother would definitely fight if they saw each other, and she warned Gol not to ruin her darling's hot springs trip. Some hours later, Fenris told Fleo to come to the Yanagi bath with her, and when he agreed, Hiya offered to accompany them. However, Fenris put her foot down and said she would let her interfere with their fun because she was determined to make a baby with him that day. When they left, Hiya visited Damalinus in her personal realm and told her that her soul only existed in that realm, with her for all eternity. When Damalinus asked what she wanted, she said she wanted to do a training drill with her and immediately put her in a bondage position on a bed. As she approached Damalinus, she said she wanted to attempt the human reproduction process, and Damalinus tried to stop the Diddy action by reminding her that they were both women, but Hia reminded her that she was a being who surpassed genders. Things got so intense that Damalinus somehow managed to force Hia out of her own dimension, and Hia realized that she needed to get consent first. Meanwhile, Fleo was chilling in the men's bath when he told Fenris that he'd love to plan a personal trip for their honeymoon, and Fenris immediately agreed to the idea. She said she was disappointed that they didn't get to share the same bath, adding that her fountain was about to overflow, causing the virgin to run away from the bath. At the same time, Hia caught Bilary exploring a Seuss portion of the resort, so she accompanied her inside a fun room in order to learn all the sacred Mia Khalifa moves. Elsewhere, Uigard and the demon generals were feasting on some high-quality grub, and when Fufun started doing Fortnite dances, Uigard punched her once again. Two demon officers started playing some party games and one of them accidentally dropped their necklace. Meanwhile, the blonde, Fraud and Suya arrived at the resort, and when he brought out one of the treasures he stole from the demon castle, it started gathering Militium. When Uigard and his generals showed up, the crystal fused with the false hero's body, causing him to transform into a monster. At the same time, Uluminus told Balarosa that she wasn't comfortable with Gol disguising himself as a human, and Balarosa deduced that she was in love with him, causing her to blush. Just then, the monster started attacking the inn, so Fleo used magic to shield the inn before sending Fenris to investigate the matter. Gol told the other ladies to leave the matter to Fleo, but Balarosa gave a passionate speech about how she and her girls would fight till the bitter end. During the commotion, the demon generals got excited when they saw Gol on the battlefield, and Uigard joined his brother in battle. When Balarosa's party arrived at the battlefield, they were stunned by the sight of Gol and Uigard having a stare down. Balarosa said she'd inform Fleo about it, while Blossom moved to evacuate the area along with the rest of the crew. Uigard fired some dark blasts at Gol, but he blocked them easily with a magic shield. The Fraud Lord went on top of the monster and manipulated the Militium in its body, causing it to attack Gol, but Gol blocked once again. Meanwhile, Balarosa met up with Fleo and informed him that a monster was rampaging at the inn, and that the demon elites were disguised as resort guests. She also told him that she saw Gol with some demons. She presumed that he was conspiring with them to cause the attack, but Fleo said he knew it wasn't possible. He said he was sure Gol and Uluminus would handle things over there, after which he made them join him in protecting the building. Meanwhile, Gol blocked another attack from the monster, but it wrapped him up with its tentacles. However, he proved to be the ultimate Giga Chad by slamming the monster face first into the building, causing it to release its grip. Gol told Uluminus that Uigard's ability to manipulate Militium was a real problem because it could eventually allow him to control their movements. However, Uluminus was more concerned about the humans that they needed to move away from the magic gem. Fenris then offered to handle the situation because she wanted to make them pay for ruining her vacation with her hubby. After she teleported herself in front of the monster, sent the blonde fraud flying with a brutal punch, causing the monster to disintegrate. Suya screamed as she fell, but Gol saved her using a levitation spell and said he promised not to harm any humans. When Uigard challenged him again, Gol asked him to back down, but Uigard said he'd never do that. He charged St. Gol with a Militium enforced fist, but Gol blocked his punch, and when he attacked again, Gol caught his hand. When Gol rage baited him, he tried spamming punches like a JoJo character, but Gol stylishly dodged his attacks. Meanwhile, Uluminus asked the demon generals what they were doing, so they told her they had no desire to fight as they came by to enjoy the hot springs. However, Fufun said she wouldn't allow Uluminus to stand in Uigard's way, and she made her spider blast her with webs, but Uluminus evaded the attack. Back in the roof, Gol blocked more of Uigard's punches and eventually spammed some attacks of his own. Uigard noticed that Gol used a move which transferred his attacks back to him, but he knew the technique didn't stop him from taking damage, so he transformed into his dark form and charged at him again. He spammed Gol with punches which Gol blocked until the demon scum nailed him with a headbutt. Uigard started trash-talking Gol until he held his mouth, and used a magic technique which removed all the Militium from Uigard's body. Uigard immediately freaked out as he noticed he couldn't summon Militium, so Gol explained that he'd temporarily sealed his Militium because he knew it was the source of a demon's immense physical strength. He claimed that Uigard was on the same level with a human at the moment, and revealed that he perfected that spell in order to defeat the previous Demon Lord. He said it was a spell which humans were trying to invent originally because the previous Dark Lord pushed them too hard, adding that trying to force enemies into submission would only bring about a demon's destruction. When the resort boss and her maids spotted the Demon Lord on the roof, they activated some special talismans which tied up Uigarde as well as the other demon generals, after which they explained that the resort's yukata was imbued with magic in case of emergencies. She asked them to leave for bothering her guests, and they were all instantly transported away by her magic. After they left, Fenris was smacking the false hero around, and when Uliminus asked her to stop, she said she wouldn't because she was removing the leftover militium in his body. Just then, Balarosa showed up and told them to get away from the building because Fleo was about to cast repair magic on it. When Fleo repaired the building, everyone applauded him, and they all had fun together for the next several hours. Meanwhile, the resort maids chased the former hero and Suya away from the resort, and the two criminals eventually got themselves trapped in a pit. A while later, the resort boss thanked the gang for their help, and told them to enjoy the hot springs as much as they pleased. That evening, the girls enjoyed bath time at the hot spring, while Fleo chilled with Gol in the men's section. Gol brought up the fact that Fleo used his powers to strive for peace between humans and demons, revealing that they'd be able to build a new relationship between the two races if they joined forces. Fleo said nothing would change if they relied on magic, and added that he'd borrow the strength of his new companions as much as he could. Some hours later, the gang feasted on a high-class meal, and as they dined, Balarosa thanked Gol for helping them out during the monster battle. Later that night, when everyone else was asleep, Fleo and Fenris sat beside each other outside the resort, and when he asked for her help in creating a peaceful world, she agreed. They shared a passionate kiss and proceeded to have a private yoga session. The next day, the gang returned to the city, and the girls did the farm work while Fleo and Gol made some weapons. When Balarosa came by, she informed them that the princess's coronation was happening that day. Gol also added that they didn't need to worry about the demons attacking, because it would take Ugard a lot of time to regain his powers. During the coronation ceremony, Elizabeth told the elder mage to keep searching for her father, who had fled the castle after his crimes were discovered, and she decided that she'd rebuild the kingdom, no matter what. That evening, Fenris called everyone at home for dinner, and after the rest of the gang walked inside, the couple discussed their plans to start up a sweets shop before walking inside. Which baddie in the series do you think Fleo would have an affair with? Balarosa? Muscle Mommy Blossom? Or maybe he might decide to clap Ultimadia's demon cheeks? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, check out this video here.